Good afternoon, this is William Theo, and rainy days and Monday always gets us up here for PTV News Now. And atop our news leaderboard this afternoon, 3 times in 15 minutes, that's how many times a Chinese Coast Guard vessel deliberately rammed into the Philippine Coast Guard's BRP Teresa Magbanua off of Escoda Shoal in the afternoon of Saturday, August 31st. The BRP Teresa Magbanua, the Philippine Coast Guard's largest vessel, which has been anchored or roaming Escoda Shoal since April, was apparently dwarfed by the Chinese vessel with hull number 5205. Among the damage of the BRP Teresa Magbanua sustained include a life-size hole on its port side and cracks and dents on the vessel's bridge ring and freeboard. Still, the BRP Teresa Magbanua will stay put or in the Escoda Shoal area while being surrounded by at least 15 Chinese ships to monitor any reclamation activity by the Chinese vessels. China's latest act of aggression in the Philippine Maritime Territory is the 5th of its kind in the month of August and drew swift condemnation from the United States, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and yes, Taiwan. Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs assailed what it called China's expansionist moves in the West Philippine Sea and cited the deployment of over 100 ships from its Navy, Coast Guard, maritime militia, and scientific and research vessels to harass and interfere with Philippine humanitarian replenishment missions in their exclusive economic zones. Meanwhile, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, assures it is up to the task of providing more than enough food and relief packs to Typhoon Enteng hit families and individuals. Agency spokesperson Irene Dumlao said the office staff and volunteers are producing family food packs for timely and prompt replenishment of food and non-food items for resource augmentation to its field offices and local government units. Meanwhile, due to the sustained rainfall brought by the confluence of Typhoon Enteng and the southwest monsoon, residents or those living near in the areas of water impoundment structures or multi-purpose dams are reminded to update themselves on the status of water levels in these dams. Here under are the water levels in the 9 major dam structures in the Luzon mainland as of 2 p.m. in the afternoon of today, September 2nd. After the latest discovery of the bodies of 6 hostages in a tunnel in Rafah over the weekend, families, friends, and supporters of the Israeli hostages have taken to the streets to protest the inability of Netanyahu to protect the hostages by reaching a ceasefire deal with Hamas. VOA's Linda Gradstein has the full story.
Just days after their families screamed to the hostages on loudspeakers at the Israeli-Gaza border, the Israeli army announced that 6 hostages were found in a tunnel in southern Gaza. The murdered hostages included Hirsch Goldberg Poland, a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen.
They were cruelly murdered by Hamas terrorists shortly before we reached them. They were abducted alive on the morning of October 7th by the Hamas terror organization. Their bodies were found during combat in Rafah in an underground tunnel, approximately 1 kilometer from the tunnel from which we rescued Farhan al-Qadi a few days ago.
The Israeli press says that rescue may have provoked Hamas to kill the 6 hostages, fearing the Israeli soldiers were getting closer. It was also reported that 3 of the 6 killed were set to be released on humanitarian grounds in the first stage of a ceasefire, including Goldberg Poland and 2 women. In mass demonstrations around the country, protesters say the government is sabotaging a hostage release deal in favor of maintaining a military presence along the Gaza-Egypt border. This policy decision was confirmed by government cabinet ministers a few days ago, and according to Israeli press reports, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledged that their decision likely meant the collapse of negotiations over a hostage deal. But after the killing of the 6 hostages, Netanyahu blamed Hamas for the lack of any hostage deal.
These days, while Israel is conducting intensive negotiations with the mediators in a supreme effort to reach a deal, Hamas continues to firmly refuse any proposal. Whoever murders abductees does not want a deal.
Polls show a majority of the Israeli public supports a ceasefire deal as the only way to release the hostages, even if it means that Hamas is not completely destroyed, according to Gershon Baskin, a longtime Israeli negotiator with Hamas.
The military pressure does not release hostages. 8 hostages were rescued in military operations. There are still 101 hostages in Gaza. If something is learned from what we learned last night when these hostages' bodies were found, is that military pressure will not save them. Military pressure will kill them.
Amid national mourning for the 6 young hostages, Israelis have gone into the streets in mass demonstrations against Netanyahu's military policy and are holding a one-day general strike Monday. Linda Gradstein for VOA News, Jerusalem.
And that's a wrap for this afternoon. Join us anew later in the evening for the second edition of our news breaks. This is William Theo urging you all to stay connected by catching the news right here, and thank you for watching.